Quip, makers of the Quip electric toothbrush, make good habits simple with the new brush head, floss refill, and toothpaste delivered every 3 months. Sets start at $25. Get your first refill free at getquip.com/auto. That's getquip.com/auto.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Autoblog Podcast. I'm Greg Migliore. Joining me today in the studio is Associate Editor Joel Stocksdale and Assistant Editor and Fleet Manager Zach Palmer. Guys, we're both back from Chicago. All three of us are back from Chicago. We're all somewhat healthy. We had a pretty good show. I don't know, Zach, you and I seem to have picked up something over in the Windy City that has left us coughing wildly. Joel, you're healthy, probably not thrilled to be in a room with both of us, but I think we're both on the other side of it. So let's put it that way. It was a good show, though. So we're going to talk about that. We've got some winners that hopefully you've seen on Autoblog.com already. So yeah, we'll break that down. Lots of cool stuff. You are going to want to, even if you did sort of follow along with us during the show, you're going to want to stick around for that. It's some good stuff. We have kind of a random news segment, just stuff that has crossed my mind. It's super random. That's literally the way I've kind of put it on the budget here. We're going to talk about the new Sonata. This is actually the first time I've really seen it up close. I had a kind of a strong opinion on it. Interested to hear what you guys think. We're going to talk about the Volkswagen Atlas Tanoak is basically DOA. A 4-cylinder Supra reports that might be a thing as soon as this week. Throwback liveries. Joel and I were arguing about this in the press room in Chicago. And then in the staff meeting this morning, we're kind of talking about the Jaguar XE, which should be arriving any minute, versus the Alfa Romeo Giulia, or really anything else in that segment. So just random, rapid discussion. Theoretically, we could pour beers, but I think we're all dehydrated and had cold medicine, so it's probably not the greatest idea. We'll roll on through to do some reviews. I spent some week quarantined in the Chrysler Pacifica. Joel did the same in the RX 450H. He drove that to Chicago, right? Mm-hmm. Nice. Okay. Then we'll spend some money. A gentleman has... looking to get rid of his BMW 135i. He needs something that's a little bit better for the New England winter. Well, that would be almost anything. So away we go. Chicago, guys. Initial thoughts. Let's start with you, Joel.
So as far as Chicago shows go, this was, I think, one of the better ones in a few years. There were a lot of, not like huge crazy updates, but I mean, that's just because that's how the Chicago show is. It's usually more minor stuff. But there were a lot of like minor stuff and things that were not as minor as past years, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, the two things that basically stood out for me, I like the GT refresh, quote unquote. I think I was joking with one of our product guys about like what a refresh of a Ford GT is, because any other car, it's like a bumper, some mirrors, maybe they flash the infotainment system. With the GT, it's a good amount more horsepower, a carbon body, which is kind of neat, and Gulf livery, and just, yeah, that's a nice refresh.
Yeah, the GT news really struck me out of nowhere, actually. This is a car that every single one of them is already spoken for. Ford is not really trying to sell new GTs right now, but here they are about halfway through the production process, and boom, 13 more horsepower shows up. They say they learned some of the things from the track-only GT Mark II to get that extra power, and they did a little extra cooling for, I suppose, if you're tracking it 110 degrees outside. And I don't know if there were any cooling issues before. I certainly haven't heard any, but apparently it's a little better now. But the big thing is that liquid carbon edition. The thing looks so sweet in person. You don't really see many supercars that are fully exposed carbon fiber body like this one is. You pay for it, $750,000.
Wow, I missed that. I didn't realize it was that much money.
Yeah, so they actually...
That does include the price. That does include the car, though, right?
Yes,
that's not... Okay, so that's not on top of the price of the car.
The base car's price, when it was initially revealed, was $450,000. With this update, they're upping it to $500,000. And then for this liquid carbon edition, it's $750,000. $100,000. So that's $250,000 more to get exposed carbon.
So you could have 2 GTs, or you could have one without paint.
Possibly, yes. But think about it this way. So if you want to buy one and you weren't one of the people that, actually ordered one, all the used ones are going for around $1 million now. A million plus. So I don't know. I don't even want to know how much that these ones are actually going to go for when they're used, when they get out there. $750,000 new. It's a shocking price.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be nervous about taking one around the track just in regular trim. Then would you double the price and put it in liquid carbon? I mean, I don't know. Suddenly, to me, that's like, you're even more worried about it. Like, what if, you get a little loose in the corner or something, I don't know.
That's what insurance is for. or massive bank accounts.
Can you imagine your AAA policy with a rider that's got like liquid carbon, on there, like Willy sure. Anyways, that was cool. I also like the Jeep Gladiator Mojave. I thought that looked pretty sweet. Very capable. A desert kind of twist on the Gladiator. I really like that. I thought that was cool. I gave that a lot of points for my editor's picks awards, which we'll get to in a second. What else stood out to you guys?
Something that really stood out to me was the 2021 Pacifica, actually. I know that we're going to talk Pacifica later, but I thought that this mid-cycle refresh was like a super significant and important thing to do. Now, when I saw the press photos in person, I was like, oh, like this front end doesn't really look that good. It's almost truckish, SUV-like. I don't really care for it. But then I went and looked at it in person, and it is super classy and good looking. I love the new front end. I love the new rear taillights and the interior too. The one that they had on the show floor, they had these quilted rear pillows for the rear passengers, and I was amazed. I was like, look at this Chrysler luxury right here. This is not what I expected from the Pacifica at all. And I mean, I loved the car before, and I think that I like it even more now with this redesign.
Did you see the Chrysler press kits that went along with it? They were like quilted pillows.
I missed them.
Yeah. I
them.
actually don't even know what the press kit part of it was. I didn't see a flash drive in there. It was just like a pillow that kind of zipped. I think it was leather. So, I mean, let's be real. FCA always wins when it comes to press kits. They give away the coolest crap at car shows. So, yeah, I agree with you. Again, we probably could talk about it now, but I drove the Pacifica a good deal last week and last weekend, and I would have liked all-wheel drive during the sort of February mini blizzard we got. I actually still think it looks pretty good. I think they got that design right the first time, but it's been 3 years, so yeah, let's freshen it up a little bit, keep it competitive. You never know what Honda's going to do with the Odyssey. I keep waiting for Kia or Hyundai to really knock it out of the park with like a product in that segment. I mean, I don't think the Sedona's doing anything great, or the Toyota Sienna, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's just smart. Right now, I would say they're probably the best in segment. You could argue with the Odyssey, it's pretty good too. Probably another discussion for another day, but it's very good, and I think they're smart to keep it good. What else?
One other thing, the Nissan Frontier, it got a new engine. Same truck, everything about it's the same, but there's a new engine and a new transmission. Nissan says it's going to be going in the next-gen truck. So it's not completely out of the question for a manufacturer to put a new engine in an aging platform or just an old vehicle just 1 year beforehand. And that's pretty much what Nissan has done here. It's going to make a super rare truck one day, so that you're going to have this 2020 Nissan Frontier with a new 3.8-liter V6 and 9-speed automatic transmission, and the rest of the truck is about 15 years old. Maybe a weird used car proposition one day, or maybe, you're still looking for that really small, cheap budget Frontier, and this is now an option in the mid-size truck category. So they surprised us with this. They're saying that the next-gen truck is coming. But no, here's the new engine now.
And I've driven this Frontier with like the older engines, and even though it's really old, it's actually still pretty nice to drive. It's still comfortable, quiet, handles decently. Interior is definitely aging, and the crash test ratings aren't fantastic either, because This was a car that was designed for, I think, 2007 model year, way back then. But honestly, I would even be tempted by this because I like the overall truck. It just really needed a new engine and transmission, and this makes quite a bit more power. It makes 310 horsepower now, and that 9-speed automatic should give it better fuel economy.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the same 9-speed as in the new Titan. So I've driven that one. The 9-speed auto is pretty good there. I imagine it'll be good here. If you want the manual, no more. This was one of the the last trucks out there to offer manual transmission.
So get your outgoing one while you can.
Exactly. No, so I mean, it was a 5-speed auto too. There were not many cars still out there that sold with 5-speed automatic transmissions. I think it's the 4Runner and the Frontier, and I'm not really sure what else after that.
Yeah,
it's a 6-speed, the Gladiator, if I recall right.
I think the Gladiator is an 8-speed actually.
8-speed.
Yeah, Gladiator's 8-speed auto, but 6-speed manual.
6-speed manual. Yeah.
Manual.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is like, let's say you're in the market for a Frontier like 3 years from now, and you're gonna have probably 3 choices: get the new one, get this like Frankenstein one, or just probably really cheaply get the collector's version. I don't know. So you got some options, which you won't really have in any other part of this segment, or really any segment when you think about it. Almost like 2.5 generations to choose from. So cool. Joel, why don't you run through the awards real quick?
Yeah, so our top 5 picks, our editor's picks, start with number 5 at the 2020 Hyundai Sonata Hybrid, which that is a car that did really stand out to me at this show because the fuel economy is remarkable. It'll get 52 miles per gallon combined, which is right on par with a Toyota Prius, but with, I think, a much, much prettier body with more horsepower.
Yeah.
It's hard to go wrong. Surprisingly, though, Hyundai also told us that the plug-in hybrid version is done. There will not be a plug-in version of this.
Why do you think they're doing that?
Well, Sonata sales have been dropping a lot over the last few years. Several years ago, I'm forgetting offhand, Sonata sales were like over 200,000. This past year, they dropped below 100,000. So I'm guessing Hyundai figures this is a very small portion of what is an increasingly small number of units sold. And the Hyundai person also mentioned some stuff about like really concentrating on making sure that just the regular hybrid was really good on this and not worrying as much about doing a plug-in. Kind of some waffling kind of PR stuff.
We blame crossovers. They're going to prioritize a plug-in hybrid on a SUV or crossover. Probably. That'd be my best guess.
I'll say this. They probably get about as much of a boost just for having a Sonata hybrid versus a plug-in hybrid. I think if you're in that sort of segment, willing to consider a Sonata as your green choice, that's probably enough that it's a hybrid. You probably don't necessarily care that it's not a plug-in.
And I suppose if you're like kind of the diehard that wants like the most efficient thing possible, wants a plug-in, you may be more interested in an ionic plug-in anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'm personally a little bit disappointed because, boy, it's a pretty car, and to like have like a really super green version of it would be cool.
Stay with us. We're going to get to that in a couple minutes. Fourth place,
the 2021 Chrysler Pacifica that we've already talked about a little bit, the fully refreshed one that has both stow and go and all-wheel drive available. And something that we didn't mention is that if you can't wait for this redesigned one, or you, for whatever reason, really hate the redesigned one, but want all-wheel drive, Chrysler is going to do a brief run of the current model year design with all-wheel drive. They'll be taking orders on that in a month or two.
That's intriguing.
Mm-hmm. So we've got the Frontier that has the new engine but the old body, and the Pacifica with the old body and the new powertrain.
It's going to be another rare bird out there.
Yeah.
I will say this. I'm one of those people that when I see the new car, it's very hard for me to like sort of like the old car. Like, we were talking about this on the podcast last week. The new Explorer, I think, really looks a lot better in person than the old Explorer, quote unquote, old Explorer. So I don't know. This is close enough that I could see like staying with the current gen, but this one does look a little classier.
I feel like it's a lateral move. I don't think I like one better than the other.
Yeah. I'll also say this. This is the second time I've seen Chrysler make it snow at a press conference. I was at the Aspen reveal back in 05, 06, somewhere like that, and they made it snow. It was for all-wheel drive. It wasn't snowing, but, lights, smoke and mirrors,
well,
flashing
they had like
snowflakes.
a whole inflatable like snow globe thing around the van, didn't they? Yeah. Anyway, on to third place, another van. We've got the 2020 Mercedes-Benz Metris Weekender. And basically, it's the Mercedes Metris like commercial minivan, but with a pop-top camper.
It was a strong third place. It has 43 points, which is only 42 points, which is only one less than 43 points for number 2 Ford GT. But let's give this Metris Weekender some love here. I mean, it's pretty cool.
Did you guys sit in it at the show?
No, every time I went by it, it was like roped off and they were doing something to it. And I'm like, what's going on here, guys?
Yeah,
Come
so
on.
I went and sat in there. I played around with a few things, hung out. And you can fit a lot of people in this thing and sleep a lot of people. It's surprising how utilitarian the rear end of this van is. And I mean, it has, they say it's hand-sewn curtains in it. Like, this is Mercedes-style luxury inside of a camper van. And I am 100% all about it.
I would love to go camping in this thing.
Yeah.
Tailgating. Can you imagine tailgating? You just wake up, roll out of bed, and you're at the football stadium or baseball stadium. That would be great.
Yeah. I mean, one of the cooler options, both front seats swivel, so you can turn around and look at your rear seat passengers. You can play cards at the end of the night, just sitting there, have a great time. It's like it's basically a tent, but it's also a Mercedes, and it's pure luxury in there too. So, no.
Pretty cool.
Really, I think a super deserved third place.
Yeah, the only thing about it, though, is that, like, the Metris is not very cheap. I'm looking at the website right now, and the base Metris passenger van starts at $35,000. And I honestly don't think it is as nicely appointed as, like, a Chrysler Pacifica or a Honda Odyssey. And then those also offer lots of handy features. The Metris is a pretty basic van.
Yeah, so I didn't see a price on the Weekender. I don't think they actually announced one, but yeah, I'm afraid to see what it actually costs when they do announce the Weekender package price. I'll see something maybe close to 6 digits with all the luxury accoutrements that they've added in there with tables and shelves and drawers everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, any pop-top conversion along with all of the extra amenities, it's going to be expensive because you're cutting a hole in the roof and you're adding a whole bunch of extra components. So regardless, it's going to be expensive. I just kind of feel like the Metris is an expensive way to start and maybe not necessarily the best choice to start with, but whatever.
Second place.
Ford GT with just 1 point ahead of the Metris.
That's,
Close.
I mean, I don't know. I will say this. There were some very strong supporters of the Metris, which is cool. To me, though, it was like, you got a Ford GT. It's not that light of a refresh. They did some things to it. I mean, to me, this even could have been best in show, frankly. I thought it was a really nice execution. They did some cool things. I don't recall them originally saying the GT was going to run this long. I feel like we're getting a bonus year out of it.
They added extra production. They announced that either last year or 2 years ago.
That's awesome.
Yep. Yeah, no, they're only halfway through production now, actually. I think they pretty much doubled what they were originally going to do. Mm-hmm. And now they're, instead of like 3 years of production, now here's 6 years of the GT. So
fine with me.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. So that leaves us with Best in Show, first place, by actually a pretty comfortable margin.
Mm-hmm. The Jeep Gladiator Mojave. And, I mean, this was my personal pick of the show because, I mean, I was expecting it to just be another paint and graphics, like, special edition Gladiator with some random name. But it's got some genuine thought and mechanical upgrades put into it. It's got remote reservoir Fox shocks all the way around. It's got a strengthened frame. It has hydraulic jounce shocks or like kind of bump stops up front so that when you're getting air out in the desert, you don't have as rough a landing. You don't damage things. It's got the taller low range transfer case so that you can go faster in low range, and you can even lock up the rear axle in high range. So you can have locked up rear wheels, maximum traction, and go at a high speed. So this is a really cool truck.
What I like about this is all of the cool stuff that makes it more capable also makes it look very cool. It was, I think, one of the neatest things on the show floor. For me, this is my top vote getter. It's sort of the thing I would like to drive home from Chicago the most. GT was a close second, but it's an awesome Jeep truck. I think the one thing about it is the Gladiator in some ways hasn't quite lived up the hype for me. I think after driving them both, I found that I actually like the Wrangler better. That's just a thing with me. I kind of like the SUV feel and functionality. And I think a little bit of the novelty is wearing off too. If you look at our site, we have a story about something like there's up to $9,000 of discounts available on the Gladiator, which is amazing considering they couldn't like sell them fast enough when they, at first arrived. So
they had huge markups from dealers.
Exactly. It was the opposite.
It was hard to get one.
Mm-hmm.
But still, richly deserved for Best in Show. As a refresher to everybody listening, the way it works in an auto show, it's a big auto show. Anybody on staff can vote. You can give up to 10 points to any one vehicle, and you cannot vote for more than 5. Most people vote for 5. Sometimes people try and sort of double dip up to 4. It's sort of frowned upon, but we let you get away with that. And it's got to be revealed at the show. So that's qualifications. Overall, I felt pretty good about these. These were basically how I voted. I think I had maybe one in my top 5 that didn't make it, but that's okay. That's actually pretty good. Final thoughts on Chicago, guys?
Well, I got a question for you guys on the Mojave. What do you guys think of that hood scoop on the hood?
The hood scoop.
Because
what's it do?
Well, nothing.
Okay.
It's blocked out.
Ah.
Oh, then I don't like it.
Less
I don't like fake hood scoops.
Because, I kind of dig the look, but it does kind of bum me out that, it's all blocked off. I mean, I get you probably don't necessarily want more water and stuff getting in through there than you necessarily want,
right.
But
yeah.
I like the color of the Mojave. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I actually had one question for you guys about the Mojave too. This or the Colorado ZR2?
This.
Yeah.
It's close because I really like the ZR2, but this.
You got a preference, Joel?
That's really, really hard.
Yeah.
Because on the whole, I really like the way the Colorado drives. Not even just the ZR2, the whole range, I think, is the best driving in the segment.
Yeah.
It's got other issues other places, but the Colorado is kind of my favorite. But you can get a manual in the Mojave, and I am kind of a manual diehard. Plus, it's a convertible. I don't know. It would be. That's a really hard choice.
It's a tough choice. They both look awesome. They both have amazing suspensions. I've only ever driven the ZR2 off-road. I haven't driven a Gladiator off-road. I'm sure that the capability is super similar.
One advantage that the Colorado would have is that it's got a much shorter wheelbase.
It does.
So you wouldn't get high centered on stuff as easily. I think that's probably one of the biggest issues that the Gladiator has is that it's really long.
Yeah.
It's a really long truck.
If I was going to go off-roading through a tight sort of wooded area, I would think twice about the Gladiator. It's almost like taking an old Ram off-road or something. It's cumbersome.
And I suppose they can get away with that because if that's your primary concern, that's what the Wrangler's for.
Right.
Because it's shorter and more nimble.
You can get a two-door if you want.
Yep.
So, I don't know. It's a really tough decision.
Good question.
I assume, if you want something a little cheaper, I think that the ZR2 will definitely be cheaper than the Gladiator Mojave.
ZR2 is a better value, I think.
It's definitely a better value, but man, it's tough to say no to taking the doors off and the roof off and going desert running real fast. That sounds awesome.
So I always ask this, Chicago, it's a really good show as far as eating and drinking. I always have a steak when I go there. It's like a thing. You go to a dinner before, usually the car companies put on dinners. They do briefings and interviews, things like that. I always have a steak. This year I had some great creamy mashed potatoes, glass of wine. It was very good. It's kind of a tradition. What'd you guys eat? Pizza, fish?
Man,
So I went with a couple other journalists from some other publications and a couple PR people to a Chinese restaurant in Chinatown, and it was
Nice.
it was fantastic, and it was nice because it was kind of a smaller group, a little quieter, not too busy. It was a nice way to cap off the show.
yeah, I sort of did the opposite of that. The last night I went to the Mazda pizza party there.
It's a lot of fun.
Where we had Gino's East Chicago style pizza, which I don't know if I'd really call it pizza. It's more like casserole, but I don't discriminate. It still tastes awesome. So super happy to eat that. They had some pretty good some appetizers there, some good wings. Always good beer there too. So great show for food, I think.
It is. It's and that specific event is my favorite event. If you're in town for the Chicago Auto Show and you're a working member of the press, I mean, it's just trays of pizza casserole, and it's so good. I would rank Chicago pizza, I don't know, third or fourth on the pecking order. I got to go with Detroit first, followed by, I like New Haven pizza. It's a very rare one. It's essentially East Coast pizza, a little thinner,
Okay.
a lot of like kind of a bigger crust and thin like slice, if you will. Goes good with like a hazy pale ale or something. Then I'd probably slot in like Chicago and then New York. I generally like thicker pizza versus thinner pizza, but I mean, it's all good.
Okay. I was a
All
little
pizza.
concerned there. I'm very much a Chicago pizza defender, although I think right now I think it's a tie for first between Chicago and Detroit pizza. I've really come around on Detroit pizza. But I was just glad to hear that you put New York lower than Chicago. I'm very anti-New York pizza.
I like New York pizza, but I don't know. It's all pretty good. I mean,
I just feel like there's a point where you go too thin.
I really like New York pizza, man. I mean, I think I'm Detroit and then New York and then Chicago. If I'm going to be completely honest, like that, I really love having a thin pizza. It's all about the crust. I don't know.
well, that's where I come
it is.
in with like New Haven pizza.
Yeah.
It's like it's kind of a riff on New York, so I'm sort of splitting it up. But I'm like, well, I don't like this East Coast stuff, but I actually like this Connecticut pizza. That's kind of a riff on it. Anyways, we should probably talk about some car news.
Cars, pizza, same
Cars,
thing.
pizza. Okay, moving on here. So rapid discussion here. Just go back to, we're going to kind of whip through these topics, get everybody's thoughts. 2020 Hyundai Sonata. We've seen this for a while, actually. I really like it. This is the first time I've seen it up close. Really got a chance to look at what they did with those headlights, the hood, the grille. It reminded me of like, I don't know, like an early 60s, like jet age kind of Thunderbird or something. Obviously, if you look at it, it's not that. But if you kind of look at it and want to see that way, you can. And I thought it looked really good. I thought it was good they went back to more of a risk-taking design with the Sonata.
Yes.
If you remember, they had that fluidic sculpture maybe 8-9 years ago. Then they went pretty conservative with it, sort of which is the way the market was trending, trying to make it almost look like, and I mean this the flattering way, it had kind of an Audi feel. It was like creased, but also very conservative. But I thought they lost some of their identity. So to me, just straight up design, love what they've done with the new car. And I mean, the front end is artistic. I give them a ton of credit for that. But I also know it's polarizing. What do you think, Zach?
So I've seen a couple of these on the road, and my eyes are drawn right to it. It's a distinctive design, and I think that's exactly what Hyundai needed to go back to with the Sonata. Just like you said, it's a car that people look at and notice again, which is huge. I also really like the interior. I think it's a cut above a lot of mid-size sedan interiors. The only thing I'm a little down on the Sonata, I think, are the engine choices right now. When we get to the Sonata N-Line, I think I'm going to be very happy because that's going to have a 2.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, and that is going to be a fun sedan. But right now, just a normal 1.6 turbo, not that much power, and the base, I believe, naturally aspirated 2-liter is also pretty down on power. So I'd wait for that N-Line, I think. And I think the N-Line is going to look pretty cool, too.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that. Although I think the fairly basic car looks pretty good. I'm a little worried they put too much stuff on it. Joel?
Yeah, I like it a lot, too. And actually, I get where you're coming from when you mention, like, older 60s type cars. I think that chrome strip that extends off of the headlights and up into the A-pillar and stuff.
You never see that anymore.
Yeah, that's actually, it reminds me a lot of like the Lincoln Continental, which had like a little strip of chrome that went from the front along that top edge all the way to the back. And I think it even has a little bit of that kind of like fuselage design along the side, kind of this very clean, rounded shape. It's really, really pretty, and it's got great accents. That chrome strip, part of the headlight goes up into it and kind of fades out into the chrome. It's a really, really cool effect. If you can see it up close, you really should. It's amazing how it like blends the trim and the headlight all together. The rear wraparound taillights are neat. The interior has nice touches. I think the solar panel on the hybrid is pretty cool. Apparently,
that's very cool. You get what, 2 extra miles per cycle or something go to that?
Yeah, if you leave it out in the sun for like about 6 hours, you have like about 2 miles of usable range out of it. It's not great, but I mean,
if it's sitting in your driveway in the sun in July, sure.
And the thing is, like, it's got to be made so that it's durable and lasts the life of the vehicle, and it has to fit that shape, so it might not necessarily be the most efficient solar panel in the world just because there are compromises for durability. But I mean, every little bit helps. It is things like that, though, that do make me really wish that there was a plug-in version of it, because
solar panels make more sense on a plug-in. The whole like holistic approach to what you're trying to do.
Yeah,
cool.
So overall, I really like it. And like the hybrid gets awesome fuel economy. Like even though it's not a plug-in, it gets great fuel economy. So
I just saw a research note came across my desk. I subscribed to all the like stock and car research analyses, if you will. And I think it was Morgan Stanley said that hybrids, like, take a step back. Hybrids are the thing right now. Like full plug-in is awesome. It's getting here. It's already here in many ways. But like, you want to like save fuel, you want something that's usable, hybrids. So,
and this might be like a subject for another time, but I've been doing a lot of thinking about like what my next car might be, and I really want to go electrified at some level. And I've kind of been back and forth, like, do you go with a long range electric that can take you a long way and can like fast charge it somewhere, or go with like a smaller electric that costs a whole lot less and just use that for kind of around town and like keep a gas car just for the occasions where I drive far away. But right now I've really been kind of landing on the idea that like a plug-in hybrid makes a lot of sense, because you could go full electric for most of your commuting. And then on the odd day that you need to drive a long ways, you get good fuel efficiency and you can gas up somewhere and not be dependent on chargers.
That's where the Pacifica that we had as part of our log-term fleet until basically late last summer. Love that thing, because you could take it home, charge it, bring it back to work, maybe not use any fuel, especially if you lived fairly local. So I'm with you. All righty, let's get to the next part of this. This is supposed to be rapid fire, not meandering fire, but good points. Good. My issue with, I'd say, random rapid discussion is usually you guys are pretty concise, but then I come back and like take it another lap and like add an extra thing on it. So this is something Joel and I were talking about in the press room, and I was like, dude, let's throw this on the podcast. Throwback liveries on cars, Gulf livery on the GT. Love it. I'll keep it short. Joel.
I am so sick of Gulf liveries. I'm so sick of Martini liveries too.
Oh, I love Martini liveries.
Come on,
I like Martinis too.
Because everybody does it and has been doing it for so long. I'm generally okay with throwback liveries, but the problem is everybody keeps doing the same ones, and it's like there are other ones out there that are really cool. Actually, when I was at Daytona a few weeks ago, I was really excited. I saw a Porsche 911 with the old 80s Apple computer livery on it.
That's amazing.
That's cool.
That was really cool. So like I'm fine with retro liveries, but I'm just like I've seen so many of the like gumball Western regional rally cars that are done up in Martini livery that they think that they think they're pro racers because they've got the famous liveries on them. And it's like I've had enough.
I'll admit it's got to be like product specific. Like to your point, some things look cheesy. It's like wearing the band's t-shirt to go to the concert, you know? But for a GT, to me, it works. So that's kind of my qualifier. I also happen to like throwback uniforms across the like spectrum. Like, I love it when like a football team rolls out in their 1935 jerseys. I think that's really cool. But I can see your point. Zach?
I am with you, Greg. I like them too. And I do like this GT as well. I think that they improved upon the Golf livery from last year. They did a run of them last year. Now they're doing a run of them this year. And it just looks a hair bit better now that they added some more pinstriping in there. But, you know, I mean, all the old stuff, you know, if you want to put like some old Formula One liveries, I really love Benetton, you know, any of the old players liveries.
Lotus has some good
if
ones.
If Lotus wants to do something,
yeah.
I'm all there for it. But yeah, no, it's, like you said, it's totally car specific. You can't just put a livery on a car for no good reason. It's just going to look dumb. But this GT works for me. I'm totally about it. I'm in no position to buy it. I wouldn't really spend extra money on it to have some special livery, but I would look at it and be like, hey, all right, that's pretty cool.
All right, moving along. Reports this week written by one Joel Stocksdale saying the Volkswagen Atlas Tanoak. I've heard like 6 different ways to pronounce this. Tanoak.
I think Tanoak is the
Tanoak.
correct pronunciation.
I was at the reveal of this thing in New York a couple years ago, and people were psyched. They kind of were like, yeah, we're maybe sort of going to do it. And then if you go through our headline, we're saying it's pretty much dead, but a smaller pickup is possible. So just real quick, take us through it, then give me a take on it.
Yeah, so basically we had an opportunity, me and other journalists, to talk with Volkswagen's chief of marketing and product strategy. And he was telling us that like the Atlas Tanoak, it got fantastic reception. Like people really, really like it. But there are a number of issues. Basically, they didn't feel like they would be able to create a pickup truck that would be as capable as like the front-running body-on-frame pickups, the Tacomas, the Colorados, the Rangers, that kind of thing. Basically, like both off-road, towing, payload, all of that probably wouldn't be as good as those. And even if they got close, like their main competitor would be Ridgeline, and that in itself already gets a pretty small chunk of sales. It was one of the worst selling midsize pickups this past year. And it would be a lot of money to hack up and chop up the Atlas chassis to try and make it a truck. And so it would be a huge investment for what would be probably pretty small returns.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, honestly, I don't think going smaller is the right move either. I think for them, good scoop, by the way. You should check this out at Autoblog.com with all of our Chicago coverage, editors' picks, mega gallery. Got to throw that plug in there. And this is a nice scoop because obviously not everybody else got this. But yeah, I don't think going smaller is the right move for them either. I think they need to. I actually think a Ridgeline play kind of is about what Volkswagen can do for their buyers. I don't think people are going to look at them for some sort of like Tacoma thing, or certainly not like a Gladiator or even a Ranger or a Colorado. So I think Volkswagen's best play is sort of like an SUV with a bed in it, sort of like the Ridgeline. And if they're not going to do that, I wouldn't go bigger. I wouldn't go smaller. Yeah, it's dead. Oh, well. I had some nice champagne 2 years ago in New York where they revealed it. Oh, well.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking that they could have something with an even smaller pickup, because they were talking about how if they went smaller, they wouldn't really have competition anyway. They'd have basically like a Subaru Baja type of vehicle. And basically something that you've got some space for like bulky items or dirty items that you don't necessarily want to put in a regular car or SUV. And they wouldn't necessarily have to beef it up like they would an Atlas-based pickup truck, because again, you don't really have the competition. Probably somebody that doesn't really need like a serious truck. They just want something for like bulky or dirty items. And they could sell it as more of a lifestyle thing as opposed to like an actual truck.
Yeah, that's kind of what Volkswagen revealed with the VW Tayrock last year in New York, with that compact pickup, like built off MQB, just a tiny little bed. They had the whole, you can flip down the rear seat and extend it, so you had a somewhat usable short bed in there. that could be cool. Everybody wants these utility vehicles. If you make that, have some rear seat room, and like you said, let's chuck a few things in the back. Could be a pretty cool camping vehicle.
Mhm.
It doesn't need to tow 6,000, 7,000 pounds or anything like
Right.
that. But it could get decent fuel economy. You could have a truck. Everybody likes the idea of a rugged truck-like vehicle these days, and nobody else is in that segment. I think it would be neat if Volkswagen did it. I have no idea what the market reception would be since nobody has it right now. But it's a unique idea.
They did say that smaller pickup truck concept that they showed also did get a lot of really good reception.
Yeah.
And they did kind of suggest that it could be based on something like their upcoming subcompact crossover that will fit underneath Tiguan.
You're kind of convincing me here a little bit, Joel,
And
which is a good thing.
in another story that I also got from the same discussion about why we're getting the special North American developed subcompact crossover and not the European T-Roc is in part because they've got a lot of production capacity at their their plant in Mexico because they've canceled the Beetle and they also are ending Mexican Golf production. So they're going to have a lot of capacity down there.
Makes sense. That's good analysis. Zach, yay or nay on the Atlas truck?
The Atlas truck, like you guys saying, I don't necessarily think that Volkswagen needs it right now. There are so many mid-sized pickups from the past few years, and if they can make something work that's even smaller than that in that unique like compact segment, I think that would be the better play because I don't think people look at Volkswagen and they think rugged pickup truck. The Ridgeline, while it sells well for Honda, it doesn't really measure up to the sales of like a Toyota Tacoma or a Chevy Colorado. You're just not quite there. And I think that the Volkswagen truck would sort of fall right in line with that and not really make a huge dent for Volkswagen in the long run.
And actually, one other note, because we might have some listeners that might be like screaming at their MP3 player or phone or whatever. They're like, what about Volkswagen Amarok, which is their like Tacoma competitor overseas? The thing with that is there isn't even a little bit of that is homologated for the U.S. Yeah. They would have to go through that entire thing, make sure that the powertrains and the chassis and stuff all pass U.S. safety and emissions regulations. That would be really, really expensive. And, that would be like as much of a pain as converting an Atlas. And, part of me also feels like the midsize segment is pretty crowded at this point. Like, I don't know that you would really want to get into it at this point because you've got Colorado, Canyon, Gladiator, Ranger, Frontier, Tacoma, and Ridgeline.
There's rumors that there's going to be a Dodge Dakota as well. Mm-hmm. If they got in, that's just one more.
Like it's a crowded market, and I don't know that it's going to. I don't know that it's going to expand all that much. So I don't know that there would be really that much market share for extra people. So
speaking of that, we actually heard last week the X-Class was basically for sure dead, which I kind of thought there might have been a play there for Mercedes. I think there's some buyers who, you're Mercedes loyalist, if you will. You're probably sort of skewed crossover, but like a truck is more intriguing to you. Mercedes knows how to make things super capable. I think they could have maybe done something with that, but so it goes.
I'll say luxury branded pickup trucks in the past have not done very well.
They've never done well.
Like Blackwood didn't do well. Lincoln Mark LT did, I think, worse. It's at least more forgettable.
You can't brand them. You basically just have to take the base truck and then load it up.
And then Escalade EXT was a thing also. And that one I think did decently, but even that didn't, it's not around anymore. So, and the thing is, I think a lot of American truck companies figured out that hey, we don't have to engineer a whole nother brand and model. We can just have a sub trim that's loaded up, and that's worked really well. You've got Denali's and King Ranches and things like that. That's where they figured out that we can do luxury and sell a lot, make a lot of money without having to create a new model.
Very good. So let's move along to a new model, perhaps Toyota Supra. We're hearing rumors a 4-cylinder may be announced as early as the Daytona 500, which is Sunday, if you're listening to this. Recording it on, what is today, Tuesday? So, I don't know. This is unconfirmed. Toyota executive sort of dropped a hint at the motor show in Chicago. So I don't know. I think this would be cool, but we'll see.
I'll bet that it happens, and I'd be totally for it if we do get a 4-cylinder Supra. The inline six is awesome. It's really, really fast. I think there's definitely room for a cheaper one with a 4-cylinder. I think BMW's 4-cylinder, which it totally will be a BMW engine, I think that their 2-liter 4-cylinder is awesome. It's one of the smoothest, best sounding, most powerful 4-cylinder turbos out there. And yeah, I mean, think a little less weight, a few $1,000s less, still great looks. I don't know about the manual transmission, probably not. I would expect it to still be the automatic. If for some crazy reason they give us a manual, then we can all celebrate. But until then, that to me is still the thing that the car is missing the most. If they add a 4-cylinder, cool. I mean, I'm totally about it.
Yeah, pretty easy slab dunk. Yay. Joel?
I've got really mixed feelings about it because...
What's to be mixed about here?
Well, I'm going to tell you. So, first off, I agree with Zach. The 4-cylinder from BMW it's a really, really good engine. We had a Z4 4-cylinder in the office several months. Actually, that might almost be a whole year ago at this point.
It was last year, yeah.
But it's a killer little engine. It feels way more powerful than it is. It makes great noises when it's got the sports exhaust. I was almost feeling like maybe you don't even need the 6-cylinder.
Yeah.
With that being said, I don't know. I mean, Toyota made such a big thing about like, oh, we're doing a BMW straight 6 because the Supra always had a straight 6. And it's like, well, okay, so now you're going to give it a 4-cylinder? And actually, if anything, it makes me think maybe they should rename it Celica because the Supra was always the 6-cylinder version of the Celica. The Celica was a 4-cylinder. At least that's how it was when it started. I mean, eventually they both diverged, yada, yada, yada. And I guess part of me is a little bit annoyed by that because it's like, well, so clearly having a straight 6 was not the most important thing. You could have built your own engine if you wanted to. I mean, it just kind of makes it clear that they did the stuff with BMW because it was cheaper that way.
So again, I'm okay with that, but I know a lot of people are not.
Yeah, and granted, I mean, these BMW engines are very, very good. I think the thing that BMW does better than anything else right now is their engines. They make some of the best on the market. So I guess the other thing, I feel like this 4-cylinder, it's going to be rated at like 254 horsepower, and I don't know, it just makes me think like, what if we'd gotten like a turbo 8.6? The thing that like everybody's been asking for ages, and like you could have that as sort of like your entry-level sports car as opposed to like adding another like lower-end Supra. And the 8.6, you can get that with a manual.
Well, why not both?
Well, because
I mean, they would eat each other alive.
Exactly, that's the thing.
But,
and I guess that's actually something else that I'm a little worried about is this 4-cylinder Supra possibly eating into whatever little is left of the 8.6 market.
I mean, so here's my theory. I think the 8.6 is about done. I mean, it's a pretty old car. I think, I don't know. I personally think I would enjoy it just out of pure in a vacuum driving experience over the Supra, just because it's so simple. It is what it is. It's like driving an old sports car. The Supra, to me, a little more complex, just like the Z4. The Z4, there's a lot going on. It's a great car. So yeah, I don't know. Long story short, I would hate to see it, but I just sort of feel like that car may be starting to like see the end of its life cycle.
Yeah, I mean they've confirmed that a next gen version is being developed currently between Subaru and Toyota. Now I'll bet that version has more power and a different engine, maybe even a turbocharged engine, and I'll bet that it still comes in at a significantly cheaper price than what they're going to price the 4-cylinder Supra at. Because the Supra right now starts about $53,000. At a 4-cylinder in there, you're looking at like maybe at the lowest, like 45, 46, 47. There's no way that a next-gen 86 would be more, with a turbo, I bet, than like 35. So you're still looking at a pretty good gap there between those two cars, even if the 86 has some power. Now, at that point, it might it might be a tough decision. Like, oh, I could buy this 86 with power, or I could buy this Supra that has slightly more power, but it's a Supra and it looks like a Supra. I don't know. It could be pretty weird if Toyota does eventually give that car some power and just everything more, a better interior, better everything to actually compete. And they'd be so close, that car and the Supra.
Sort of like 911 and Cayman Boxster argument.
Yeah.
And I mean, on the upside, like I said, the 4-cylinder is really good, and it would probably be reasonably affordable compared with the Supra 6-cylinder, and also compared with the Z4 4-cylinder. The Z4 4-cylinder starts at right about $50,000.
Yeah, it's the same price as the Supra.
Yeah, so you could basically get a base Z4 for a significant discount. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it starts at like low $40,000 for the Super 4-cylinder.
That'd be awesome if they could get it that low.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's in kind of a weird place. It undermines Toyota's message that like the Supra had to have a straight 6. Yeah, I don't know. I'm mixed about it. I guess I'd almost sort of want them to, I don't know, give this hypothetical 4-cylinder Supra a more unique character to it. Because, like, I worry a little bit about sort of what happens with Mustangs and Camaros, where, like, if you don't get the V8, everybody's like, oh, you got the weak one. Like, no, like, everybody kind of craps on the lower output one.
Do you remember the Hyundai Genesis Coupe with the 4-cylinder? That was a really good 4-cylinder. It was a pretty raw car. And I think, I mean, that was, granted, a product that didn't really do all that great, but it was, for enthusiasts, that was a pretty good car. And you could get, was it called R-Spec? Was that like the sort of the racy trim? An R-Spec 4-cylinder with a manual had a very distinct character. If they could achieve something like that, well, it might be onto something. So it's doable, but I mean, then you got to come up with a business plan, which is always the tricky part in cars in this segment.
Yeah.
So speaking of another segment that isn't doing all that great, kind of an awkward transition, Jaguar XE versus Alfa Romeo Giulia, smaller luxury sedans. Basically, Joel and I were talking about this at the start of our editorial meeting today. I forget how this even came up. We were just like, an XE Diesel is arriving, and we're like, hey, that's cool. And then I think you said something like, this is your favorite car in segment. Then Zach chimed in, actually, I think I like the Giulia better. And then I said, I think I agree with you. We had a mini podcast segment this morning. We didn't record it. Now we're doing it. Go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, so that's exactly what happened. We were just discussing small luxury sports sedans because we're getting an XE in the office, and I'm really excited. I'm taking it this weekend.
It's a beautiful car.
Yeah. And we had a diesel one a couple years ago as a long-term car, and just every time I drove it, I was just bowled over by how good the ride and handling balance was. The steering was so precise and communicative, and it rode really well, and it felt really planted, and I love driving it. And it was even better with the more power you gave it. And I think I do like it just a little bit better than the Giulia. I think the steering has a little better weight, a little bit more precision. And I feel like the chassis is just a little bit more planted all around. The Giulia is a lot of fun, but I think I like the Jaguar a little better.
So I'm just slightly on the other side of the coin with that. I think I like the Alfa just a little bit better. I think the styling really pops in that segment, and that to me is great. The powertrain options you could get are pretty great in the Alfa, which is a good thing. I really do like the Jaguar. Like, I totally see what you're putting down there. Have a soft spot for the XE. The diesel was like just such a bizarre, odd duck in that segment. Like, it was great pulling up to like truck stops in your Jaguar and pull it up behind the semi, and it's like, yeah, I'm behind you. It's all right.
There were a couple times that I filled that up that somebody would be like, hey, you know that's diesel, right? And you're like, and I'm like, yes, I know.
Yeah.
I know. And they're like, wait, what?
It was pretty great. We should have done a video on that or something. Yeah. But yeah, anyways, Alfa for me. And I think Alfa is perhaps the most interesting car in this segment.
Yeah.
Zach?
It's definitely the Alfa for me as well. I mean, there are a lot of great choices if you're an enthusiast in this segment. the Alfa, the BMW, the Genesis G70, and the Jaguar XE, they're all really, really great cars. Everything's quick, everything handles well, but I think the Giulia is a little bit more of an enthusiast car than those other ones are. The looks, I think I will take the Alfa over pretty much anything. I think it's the most distinctive, best styling out there, and I like the chassis and the steering of the Alfa a little bit better. Turns in quicker. The steering has perfect weight to it. I feel like there's some actual steering feel in there, and yeah, no, the 2-liter engine, it's not much to write home about. It's fast. There's not enough character for me. I think if you put like an aftermarket exhaust on there, I've heard some, and they sound fantastic. As it is stock, it's a little quiet, but fast car, great handling car, great looking car. Yeah, I'll have the Alfa every day.
So actually, you mentioned G70, and that's actually my favorite.
Yeah.
I'd kind of forgotten about that
nice car,
earlier.
I'll say that. It's not my favorite, but it's a beautiful car.
Oh gosh, I love that thing. Every time we get one in. And that one is the only one you can get with a manual, which is another big bonus. And even if you don't get it with the manual, you can get it with that twin-turbo 3.3-liter V6 that's shared with the Stinger, and that makes for a heck of a car. I love the G70. And it's got a more usable interior that looks nicer than both the Alfa and the Jaguar. So
the G70 is probably the sensible choice of all of them, that and the 3 Series, but I think my emotions want me to buy the Alfa, basically.
Yeah, that's the point of it for me.
That's
that's why, it's to me, it really is like a beautiful Italian sports sedan. Yeah. In the way a Jaguar, I remember looking at that XE in my driveway thinking, this thing could be the new Fusion. Take the growler off, it had a very nice grille, but there's nothing about that car that totally popped. It was beautiful in a vacuum, but it wasn't like just this standout design, and not everybody wants that. We'll say this, I like the Jaguar infotainment better than the Alfa infotainment.
That's a pretty low bar, though.
It really
I'm
is.
just saying, we're comparing two cars here. There's one is slightly worse than the other.
And actually, the Genesis is the sensible one, but also that is the one that does get me emotionally, in part because of the manual transmission. It's not the best manual around, but
that's fair.
But having that does up the involvement a lot. And I don't know. Every time I drive it, I'm like, this chassis is spectacular. It's so responsive and balanced. I really, really like it.
All right, moving along to reviews. This is the longest I think we've ever gone on a podcast without getting to the review section. We're going to do it pretty quick because these are just fairly important cars, but it is what it is. I spent a week basically in the 2020 Chrysler Pacifica. This is the old model. This isn't the new one with a new grille, with all-wheel drive and quilted seats, any of that. But it was very nice. It reminded me just how much I do enjoy driving a van, a good minivan. I would say I had a very interesting sort of test case here. 2 weekends ago, I had the Ford Explorer ST for the weekend, did all family things in that. And then basically last weekend and then kind of surrounding the Chicago show, had the minivan. And what I found was for family stuff, give me the minivan. The sliding doors make all the difference in the world. When you're loading a toddler who may be putting up a fight into his car seat, it's just easier. It's like the wall swings back. You don't have to kind of jump over the wheel well like you do in the Explorer in almost any other car. So you're definitely giving up some styling for functionality, which is sort of the trade-off of life. I don't think the Pacifica is a boring thing to drive. It steers pretty well for what it is. Uconnect is great. I like all of the infotainment systems, and just it's very solid. The interior is pretty nice. You can see out of it pretty well. Adequate power. Now, will the ST and basically most versions of the Explorer give you a little more energetic drive? Of course they will. And with the Explorer, you do get it's a legit rough and tough SUV, and it looks pretty cool. You're driving the new Explorer, not the family hauler. But just from a practical standpoint, the minivan is generally better. I think if you have, especially younger kids, I know my dog loved laying down the middle between the two captain's chairs. So it's just that inside is like going into a conference room. There's so much space in there, and it drives well. It's pretty quiet. That soaring panoramic sunroof is really nice. I believe ours was the S model, stow-and-go seats. It was blacked out, which made it look pretty cool. The wheels were this like smoky black. So it was a pretty cool vehicle. And yeah, it made me kind of wistful for the days of our long-term Pacifica hybrid, which was obviously a plug-in. This one wasn't, but came in at about 51, give or take. Very functional, easy to put stuff in. And I tell you what, you feel like what's a great Star Wars reference here? A Jedi something, getting in and out of it. I think you had this reference, Joel, in one of your long-term updates. I mean, you like look at the car, the door's open, and that's awesome. You know, you can't put a price on that when you're trying to load groceries or, you know, again, carry a toddler. The Explorer, the doors don't open or automatically. So, you know, hey, I don't know. I guess right now I'm more of a minivan guy than I am, you know, rough and tough SUV guy. 10 years before or after it might change, but it's where I'm at.
I mean, vans just are unquestionably the most convenient for carrying people and stuff. And actually, for the Chicago show, I was being hosted by Toyota, and I was really happy that I was being hosted by a company that actually makes vans, because that's what they were using Siennas to hustle people back and forth from the hotel to the convention center. Oftentimes when I'm on a press trip, it's like a Chevy Suburban or something. And so there's a whole bunch of like crawling over seats trying to get to the third row that's really cramped and hard to get to. But like anytime that it's a company that has a van, they usually bring out the van, and it's so much more comfortable. It's so much easier to get in and out of. Vans are nice. Actually, it's interesting, your comparisons to like crossovers, because talking with some Chrysler people, they were saying that this bringing back all-wheel drive for the Pacifica is sort of a play to kind of get crossover-y kinds of buyers, because that's one of the things that people want with a crossover. They want to be able to have all-wheel drive. I was kind of thinking, like, I wonder if they should go an extra step and put like fender flares and stuff on a Pacifica and call it like Pacifica X or something, like kind of make it a pseudo crossover van.
Did they raise the ride height on the new one? No?
Not that I could see.
All right. Yeah, no. I mean, I think that the front end does look a little more SUV-like.
It does.
On
and they even put in like a new center console that looks a lot more crossover-y. Like it kind of splits the two seats apart. It's not this big like open well, kind of like a van. So it makes it feel more car-like or SUV-like. I think they did take steps to try and make it less like a van.
One thing that I will say about like comparing an SUV like an Explorer versus the Pacifica is you are pretty low to the ground in the Pacifica. It handles shockingly well for what it is.
Yeah.
But last weekend it snowed. In the Explorer, you are pretty high up, and that's a nice feeling, especially when you're riding on those monster tires. I mean, there's certainly a reason why people want the sort of in-command SUV. So speaking of SUVs, crossovers, you had a Lexus, which you took to Chicago, Joel.
Yep, the RX 450h. So it was the hybrid version. And for a lot of highway driving, it was nice. It was it was really, really comfortable. It was really, really quiet. Which, between my two daily drivers, a Civic Si and a Mazda Miata, I feel like I've been getting a little bit sensitive toward like road noise and things. So it was nice having something quiet. Boy, though, you can tell that the RX is really getting old. It doesn't handle all that great. The interior, it's not nearly as nice as the most recent Lexus products. It feels a little bit plasticier. Just the controls aren't quite as nice. The biggest thing, though, that I noticed is that this is an old school hybrid setup. I mean, it does have an electric motor for the front and an electric motor for the back, but there's not a lot of battery capacity, and the motors themselves are not super powerful. So it was so hard. It was almost impossible to like accelerate anywhere under just electric power. You would be creeping along to try and keep it in electric only. And on the highway, it was always gas powered. It never would like kick off the engine for a while and let the electric motors coast it. And it's even kind of reflected in the fuel economy. I was getting around like 29 mpg when I was like in town in Chicago, kind of creeping about. And on the highway, it would drop down to about like 28 because it was basically running as a normal RX with the V6.
I just took it to lunch actually and was totally underwhelmed. Best thing I could say is I like the color.
It's a really lovely shade of green. Actually, it kind of looks
cool.
like Greg's shirt right now. Not that you can actually see that.
right. It's a good looking vehicle.
Kind of like a pine green.
Foresty green, like a Subaru green, you might say.
Actually, I was at a gas station and this lady was filling up and she was like, you know, when I looked at your car, I was like, that's a really ugly color. Why would anybody get that? And she was like, you know what? But the more I looked at it, I was like, that's actually a really nice shade of green. I don't really know.
Sounded like
I don't really know what to take from
compliment,
it, but
sort of.
well, I think she just was like I think her initial reaction was like, oh, that's a weird looking color. But then she was like, nah, it kind of works.
So she started out like kind of insulting you and then it warmed up into a compliment.
Yeah, it was an interesting exchange, but you know.
There's no good transition. Let's spend some money on that one. Okay, we got a New Englander. Today is the New Hampshire primary. So, hey, I don't know. Good, that fits. He's coming off a BMW 135i with the M Sport package of the 6-speed manual. He cannot deal with another New England winter on the horrible roads. Hey, try driving in Michigan with, of course, the rear-wheel drive and the limited ground clearance. Wants to move to a diesel SUV. Must be very convenient. Needs to tow and haul. We're talking jet skis, sailboats, U-Hauls, things like that. Work is highway miles to the tune of about 30,000 miles per year. So diesel makes sense. Post Dieselgate, the options have dwindled. Yeah, quite a bit. Big fan here is the Jaguar F-Pace 20D. It's just over budget. So the options are a used Jeep Grand Cherokee diesel, a used Mercedes ML diesel, a brand new Mazda CX-5 diesel, which we actually just had the fleet last fall. All are coming in about 40 grand. Then he kind of reasons back here to the $45,000 range with the Jaguar. So it sounds like he could at least be persuaded if we could make a strong case for that. Wants to know what he should go with, or is he leaving something out? That's what Jewel always is good at. And then here's actually sort of the kicker. 2-year purchase is all this really is then he wants to go get a Jeep Gladiator Overland. And he's hoping basically that the resale value will still be there in 2 years. So this is a very interesting question, I think. Yeah. Zach, start with you.
I'm going to fly right off the recommended options list right away and suggest a Porsche Cayenne diesel. Now, I'm talking the mid-2010s Cayenne diesel. You can find them for mid-20s to mid-30s, so right within that price range. If you want a super low miles one, they creep up to about $40,000. But no, tons of torque from that diesel V6. Towing, I looked it up, 7,716 pounds of towing capacity with that thing. So you can pretty much tow whatever it is you were thinking of with your diesels. And you're getting, I think, high 20s MPG on the highway as well. So he does a lot of highway driving. That sounds pretty great. And on top of that, you know, he sounds like somebody that likes a fun car to drive. He's getting out of a BMW 135i, which I'm sad to hear that because that's a pretty awesome car. But if you're going to drive an SUV, you might as well drive something fun. And it doesn't get much more fun from a handling and steering perspective than a Cayenne. So this kind of hits all of those. It's not super fast. I think it's 0 to 60 in the 7-second range, but you know, that's what you're giving up for pretty good fuel economy and great towing with the diesel. So go get the Porsche.
That's very creative. I always like when people order off the menu. I've got my choice, but I'd like to hear yours, Joel.
Yeah, so I know that in our office, the CX-5 diesel is not the most loved. It is expensive. It doesn't get as good mileage as we'd hoped, but it is still really nice to drive. It does offer decent towing for the CX-5 range, and the fuel economy is all right. I'd say stay away from the Mercedes, I think. I don't know. I just worry about electronics and things on older Mercedes. Grand Cherokee Diesel wouldn't be bad. I think, though, one of the things I'm going to recommend looking for, it might be a little tricky to find because it was only made for a year, I think, the Equinox Diesel.
Wow. I wrote that story when they announced it. I remember sitting doing it, and it was a year.
Mm-hmm. Or it's a GMC twin.
The Terrain Diesel.
Yeah. They get great fuel economy. They get high 30s on the highway. It's a strong engine, and I mean, you'll have service centers all over the place. Shouldn't be too crazy expensive to take care of. Not the nicest inside, but not bad, and they drive pretty decently. And especially if you're only going to have it for a couple of years before buying something else, I bet you could get this for a lot cheaper than the other stuff that you're looking at. So really great fuel economy, probably a decent price, and drives decent too. And if that gets you to whatever your next vehicle is, I mean, you're saving some money for whatever that is. I think this would be a solid way to go.
So my choice is I'm going to split the difference here. I'm going to go with two. One is the Mercedes ML. My thought is you could get like a 2015, just kind of looking at some different sites here. I'm seeing one here for just a little over 20 grand. It's not bad, 64,000 miles-ish. Looks good. It's a Mercedes. It's not that old. The body style is a little out of date, but not crazy out of date. I was a little with you too, Joel, as far as just like, Mercedes diesels, just anecdotally, it just seemed like there was a lot of stuff going on there from that era. But again, you're keeping it for 2 years. Enjoy the diesel, enjoy the four-wheel drive, and it's a very nice SUV. Or the Grand Cherokee would be my choice. I think that was a very cool thing that didn't last all that long. I don't think you could go wrong with either, especially if you're just going to keep it for 2 years. The plan is sort of drive it and then, move on to something else, move forward, and go from there. I do think, like, if you're going to actually maybe keep these for a few years, that's where you get into, like, the CX-5, because it would be a new vehicle. You get that new warranty. It's not perfect. As, I think John Snyder wrote the piece for us, but it is a new Mazda. It's the diesel. It sort of underachieves and probably isn't quite even what Mazda hoped it would end up being. But if you get a deal on one, I mean, I wouldn't say no to that. And then a used Equinox diesel, again, that's like a newer vehicle with decent fuel economy that, definitely might last you 3 or 4 years, something like that. But again, my two, if you had to say, hey, you got to pick one, well, all right, I'm going to pick two. I'd go with the ML or the Grand Cherokee diesels.
And as a bonus on the Mazda, the diesel's only on the signature trim right now, so it comes with everything. It comes with the nicest interior, all the features. So those are completely loaded.
I would say driving like a 1 Series in New England for as long as you have, that's amazing in the summer, flying up the Merritt Parkway or something. And yeah, I mean, that's great. But I mean, driving that thing in the winter, I mean, even with snow tires, you're so low to the ground. So I think it is time for an upgrade. I don't know. I kind of feel like I think what Zach's thinking here is maybe find a garage or old carriage house, put the 1 Series away, find a way to keep it. I don't know if that's really doable for this writer, but hey, do let us know how things turn out. Great show today, guys. Had a lot of fun. Talked about a lot of different things. That's all for this week's episode of the Autoblog Podcast. Send us your Spend My Monies. If you're so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be safe out there. We will see you next time.